The Galactic Unity Academy floated in the cold emptiness of space, far from any sun or planet. It was a massive station, home to thousands of students from dozens of alien species. For 300 years, this place had trained the best soldiers, diplomats, and leaders in the known galaxy. Every powerful species sent their young ones here. It was an honor to be accepted. It was a greater honor to survive. This year was different. This year humans had come. Stood in the arrival hall with 11 other humans. He was 23 years old, tall for a human, with short black hair and calm eyes that watched everything. Beside him stood Lee, a woman who had spent 5 years pulling survivors from disasters on Earth. On his other side was Park, a former Marine whose body was covered in old scars. Behind them stood 9 more humans, all chosen from Earth's best. They were the first humans ever allowed into the academy. The arrival hall was enormous. The ceiling rose so high that clouds could have formed inside. Thousands of alien students filled the space, and almost all of them were staring at the small group of humans. Felt their eyes. He heard their whispers, even though the translation devices in his ear turned alien words into Korean. Those are the humans. They are so small. Look at their skin, so soft. How do they survive anything? I heard their planet is a death world. Class 12. How are they even alive? They will not last 1 month here. Kept his face empty. He had expected this. Earth had only made contact with alien life 18 years ago. To the rest of the galaxy, humans were newcomers, primitives, animals who had somehow learned to build spaceships. A group of students walked past. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. They moved like they owned the station. One of them bumped into Park hard enough to make a normal person stumble. Did not move. He was built like a wall. The look surprised, then disgusted. Watch where you stand, human. Smiled. It was not a friendly smile. My mistake. The walked away quickly. Lee leaned close to. They really hate us, don't they? They don't hate us, said quietly. They think we are beneath them. That is worse. A loud tone filled the hall. The students began moving toward a raised platform where several figures stood. These were the instructors. Counted 8 of them, each from a different species, but one stood out from the rest. He was a massive reptilian creature covered in scales as black as the space outside. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and a tail thick with muscle. His eyes were yellow and cold, like the eyes of a snake. When he looked at the humans, felt something old wake up in his chest. A survival instinct from 1,000,000 years of evolution. This creature was a predator, and he was looking at them like they were food. That is Instructor, a voice said beside. He turned to see a small alien with gray fur and large ears. The alien looked nervous. He is famous. He breaks cadets, makes them quit. Some say he has never failed to break a student. Be careful of him. Before could respond, the alien hurried away, disappearing into the crowd. Director Talai stepped forward. She was an elderly woman with silver markings on her blue skin. Her voice was cold and formal. Welcome to the Galactic Unity Academy. You have been chosen from billions of candidates across the galaxy. You represent the finest your species has to offer. Over the next 2 years, we will test you. We will push you beyond your limits. Many of you will fail. Some of you will break. A few of you may die. This is the price of excellence. She paused and looked directly at the humans. Some of you are new to galactic society. You may find our standards difficult to understand. You may find our methods harsh, but the galaxy is harsh. We do not make exceptions. We do not lower our standards. You will meet them or you will leave. Felt tense beside him. He put a hand on her arm. Stay calm. After Director Talais finished speaking, the students were divided into squads. By some miracle, or perhaps by design, all 12 humans were placed together. They were assigned to Training Unit 17, under the direct supervision of Instructor. Was not surprised. Someone wanted them to fail. Their quarters were on the lowest level of the station, far from the comfortable rooms given to other species. The walls were bare metal. The air was cold. The beds were hard slabs meant for species that did not need comfort. Park dropped his bag on one of the beds. They put us in a storage room. "It is better than some places I have slept," said. She was the smallest of the group, barely 20 years old, with a round face and quick eyes. She had been a wilderness survival instructor before joining the program. "At least there are no insects." The squad medic was already checking the room for hazards. "The air quality is poor. The temperature is below standard. They are testing us already." "Let them test," said. He gathered the squad around him. 12 faces looked back at him. 12 humans far from home, surrounded by species that wanted them gone. "We knew this would happen. We knew they would not welcome us. But we are here for a reason. Earth chose us because we do not break easily." Baysara, an engineer with steady hands and a sharp mind, nodded. "So what is the plan?" Looked at each of them. Lee, Park, Baysara, and the others. Shin, Moon, Han. "The plan is simple," said. "We survive, we excel. We show them what humans are made of, and when they try to break us, we do not break." Cracked his knuckles. "I can do that." Smiled. This might even be fun. Far above them, in the instructor quarters, was meeting with Director Taylais. "The humans are in my unit," he said. His voice was deep, like stones grinding together. Taylais nodded. "The Council wants them tested thoroughly. They believe humans are too fragile for galactic service. Prove them right." His yellow eyes gleamed. "I have broken warriors from species that have conquered star systems. These soft creatures from a primitive world will be no challenge." "Do not underestimate them," Taylais warned. "Their planet is classified as a death world. They must have some strength to have survived there." Made a sound that might have been laughter. "Their planet is dangerous to them. That does not make them dangerous to us. They are prey animals who learn to use tools, nothing more." He turned to leave, his tail sweeping across the floor. "Give me 3 weeks," he said. "I will have them begging to go home." Taylais watched him go. She had her doubts. She had read the reports on Earth, the wars, the disasters, the countless ways humans had found to kill each other and survive anyway. But she said nothing. The Council wanted the humans to fail, and who was she to argue with the Council? 3 levels below, lay on his hard bed, staring at the metal ceiling. He could hear the station humming around him. He could feel the cold seeping into his bones. He thought of Earth, of his family, of the green mountains and blue oceans so far away. He thought of Instructor and his cold yellow eyes. Something was coming, could feel it, a test, a challenge, something designed to break them. He closed his eyes and smiled. They had no idea what humans could endure. 3 weeks passed. The humans did not break. Instructor had tried everything. He made them run until their legs gave out. He made them fight until their bodies were covered in bruises. He starved them. He froze them. He put them through combat simulations that would have killed lesser species. The humans adapted. When he made them run, they ran together, the stronger ones helping the weaker ones. When he made them fight, they fought smart, using teamwork to defeat opponents twice their size. When he starved them, they shared what little food they had. When he froze them, they huddled together for warmth. It was infuriating. Sat in his quarters, reviewing the data on his screen. The humans should have quit by now. Every other new species he had trained had lost at least half their cadets by this point. The humans had lost none. He pulled up information on Earth again. He had read it many times, but he read it again, looking for weakness. Earth was a Class 12 death world. The gravity was crushing. The weather was violent and unpredictable. The planet was filled with predators, parasites, and poisons. Disease spread through the air and water. The star bombarded the surface with radiation. Earthquakes split the ground. Volcanoes filled the sky with ash. The oceans rose and fell without warning. And yet humans had not just survived there, they had thrived. They had spread across every part of their deadly world. They had killed most of their predators. They had built cities and machines and weapons. They had reached into space. How? They were so fragile, their skin tore easily, their bones broke. They could not see in the dark or hear beyond a short range. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor. They were slow and weak compared to most species. Found his answer in an old Earth document that had been translated into the Galactic database. It was about human evolution, about how humans had survived. Humans were persistent hunters. They did not chase prey quickly. They chased it slowly, for hours and hours, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Humans did not stop. They did not give up. They kept going long after any reasonable creature would have quit. And when cornered, when threatened, when pushed too far, they did not flee. They fought. With tools, with fire, with their bare hands. They had wiped out species larger and stronger than themselves. They had killed predators that should have eaten them. Close the document. He finally understood. Physical challenges would not break the humans. Their bodies were weak, but their minds were not. He needed a different approach. He needed to break their spirits. The next morning, gathered his unit in the training hall. The 12 humans stood in formation, tired but unbroken. Other students had gathered to watch. Word had spread about the humans who would not quit. Today, announced, you will face Chamber 18. A murmur went through the crowd. Even the humans noticed the reaction, though they did not understand it. Baysara leaned toward, what is Chamber 18? A Prill student nearby heard her question. His voice was a whisper. It is the fear test, a simulation room that finds your deepest terror and makes you face it. Many cadets never recover from it. Nodded slowly. He looked at who was watching them with those cold, yellow eyes. The instructor was smiling. For the first time since they arrived, was smiling. This was the real test. An hour later, the 12 humans stood before a massive door. Chamber 18 was carved into the metal above it. Through a window, they could see an observation deck where dozens of aliens had gathered to watch. Stood at a control console, his 4 arms moving across the buttons. The rules are simple, said through a speaker. Survive for 30 minutes. Maintain your composure. Do not beg for the simulation to end. If you break, you fail. If you fail, you leave the academy. Park cracked his neck. 30 minutes, that is nothing. Smile grew wider. We shall see. The door opened. The humans walked inside. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was empty and dark. Then the simulation began. The temperature dropped so fast that frost formed on their skin. Their breath turned to mist. Then, without warning, it reversed. Heat blasted them from all sides. The air became thick and hard to breathe. Temperature manipulation, said, already checking his. Stay calm, regulate your breathing. Then the gravity changed. It pressed down on them, nearly 20% heavier than Earth normal. Several humans stumbled, gasped but kept her feet. Shadows began to move along the walls. Shapes emerged from the darkness. Predators. Creatures with too many teeth, too many eyes, too many legs. They circled the humans, growling and hissing. Fire erupted from the floor. Water began flooding from the walls. The sounds of screaming filled the air. It was chaos. It was madness. It was every nightmare combined into one room. On the observation deck, the alien students watched with wide eyes. This was far beyond the standard test. Had increased the intensity to levels meant for veteran soldiers, not first-year cadets. He will kill them, one whispered. Perhaps that is the point, another replied. But the humans did not break. Lee looked at the chaos around her and laughed. It burst out of her like a surprise. This is it. Remember that typhoon that hit. Remember how we spent 3 days pulling survivors from flooded buildings while the wind tried to kill us. Was already moving, organizing the squad. Formation, stay together, watch your step. You have the left side. take the right. Grabbed a loose metal panel from the floor. The simulated predators were circling closer. He knew they were not real. He knew this was just a test, but his body did not care. His heart was pounding. His muscles were tight. And he felt alive. "Spread out," he ordered. "Do not let them corner us. Stay in the center. Be ready for injuries." Began to sing. It was an old Korean folk song, one her grandmother had taught her. Her voice was steady and clear, cutting through the screaming and roaring. One by one, the other humans joined in. They did not know all the words, but they hummed along, their voices rising together. The students on the observation deck looked at each other in confusion. Why were they singing? They should be screaming. They should be crying. They should be begging for the test to end. Instead, they were singing. Watched the monitors with growing frustration. The humans showed elevated heart rates. They showed fear responses, but they were not breaking. They were fighting. They were working together. They were actually pushing back against the simulation. He increased the intensity. The predators grew larger, the fire spread. The water rose, the screaming became louder. The humans kept singing. Basora had climbed onto a raised platform, scanning the room with sharp eyes. "The fire comes from those vents," she shouted. "The water from those panels. If we block them, we can control this space." "Do it," ordered. Within minutes, the humans had identified the room systems and were manipulating them. They blocked vents with torn panels. They redirected water flows. They created safe zones in the chaos. Claws scraped against the console. This was impossible. No species had ever fought back against the simulation like this. They were supposed to endure. They were supposed to suffer. They were not supposed to adapt. He looked at the intensity levels. He was already far beyond safety limits. Any higher and someone would get hurt. His yellow eyes moved to the safety switch. One of the students beside him noticed his look. "Instructor, you cannot. The safety protocols exist for a reason." Did not respond. He watched the humans on the screen. They were 15 minutes in, halfway through, battered, exhausted, but still standing, still singing, still fighting. He made his decision. His claw moved to the safety switch and turned it off. On the observation deck, alarms began to flash. Warning messages appeared on every screen. Director Talais, watching from her office, stood up from her chair. "What is he doing?" she whispered. In Chamber 18, the simulation changed. The fire became real. The predators became solid. The danger became genuine. And, standing in the center of the chaos, felt the difference immediately. He looked up at the observation window. He looked directly at Instructor. And in that moment, something in his eyes changed. Fear became something else. Something far more dangerous. The heat on skin was different now. It burned in a way simulations never did. The smoke filling his lungs was real. The blood dripping from a cut on his arm was real. Everything was real. "It is live," he shouted to his squad. "The safety is off. This is not a test anymore." For one heartbeat, fear filled the chamber. Real fear. The kind that makes animals freeze. The kind that makes prey wait to be eaten. The humans were not prey. Park was the first to react. He grabbed the nearest piece of debris, a metal bar that had fallen from the ceiling, and swung it at the creature approaching from his left. The bar connected with a crack. The predator construct stumbled backward. It was semi-solid now, not quite real but real enough to hurt, real enough to be hurt. "They bleed," shouted. "That means they can die." Something clicked in every human in that room. Their ancestors had survived ice ages and predators and wars and plagues. Their DNA carried the memory of 1,000,000 years of fighting to stay alive. They were not bred for comfort. They were bred for survival. And survival meant fighting. Lee moved like water. She found the pipes in the wall that were flooding the room and tore them free with her bare hands. Her fingers bled from the sharp metal, but she did not stop. She redirected the water toward the fire, creating barriers of steam that the predators could not see through. "Use the environment," she screamed. "We control this space, not them." Had stopped singing. She was moving through the chaos with purpose now, her small body slipping between dangers that would have caught larger targets. A piece of falling debris cut her shoulder open. Blood soaked her uniform. She used the blood to mark safe paths on the floor, her hands leaving red trails that the others could follow. "This way," she called. "The floor is stable here." Was everywhere at once. He had torn strips from his uniform to make bandages. He treated injuries without stopping, his hands steady even as fire roared around him. He had trained for this. On Earth, he had worked in emergency rooms during natural disasters. This was just another disaster. Pressure on that wound. Do not move your arm, it might be broken. Keep going, do not stop. Baysara had found the room's structural weakness. Every machine had weak points. Every system could be broken. She was an engineer. Breaking things was half her job. "The control systems run through that panel," she shouted, pointing at a section of wall that was still intact. "If we destroy it, the simulation loses power." Heard her? He looked at the panel, then at the distance between them and it. 20 meters of burning floor, rising water and circling predators. "Clear a path, everyone else stay close, we move together." They moved. On the observation deck, the alien students had fallen silent. Many had left. They could not watch anymore. The ones who remained stood frozen, unable to look away. A cadet pressed herself against the back wall. Her hands were shaking. "What are they doing? Why do they not give up? The door is right there. They could surrender." No one answered her. Stood at the console, his 4 arms hanging at his sides. He had expected the humans to break when the danger became real. He had expected them to run for the door, to pound on it, to beg for release. That was what every other species did when faced with true mortal danger. The humans were not running. They were attacking. Who had been quiet for most of the training picked up a piece of burning wreckage. The flames licked at his hands. He did not seem to notice. He threw it at the nearest predator, and when the creature recoiled, he charged forward, leading the squad through the gap. Was fighting with a broken arm. Someone had tied it against her body, and she was using her other arm to swing a metal pole at anything that came close. Her face was pale with pain, but her eyes were bright with something that looked almost like joy. Shin had always been the quietest human in the squad. He rarely spoke. He followed orders and did his job without complaint. Now he was screaming. It was not a scream of fear. It was a battle cry, a sound that came from somewhere deep in human history. He charged at a predator 3 times his size and drove a piece of metal into its eye. Moon and Hand fought back to back, covering each other, moving as one unit. They had trained together on Earth, and that training showed now. Where one was weak, the other was strong. They flowed through the chaos like they had been doing this their whole lives. The youngest after had found a fire extinguisher. She used it to clear paths through the flames, spraying white foam that turned the air thick and cold. When a predator lunged at her, she hit it in the face with the canister hard enough to crack its skull. Director Tail Eyes burst onto the observation deck. Her face was twisted with shock and rage. "What have you done?" she screamed at. "You will kill them all." Did not answer. He could not look away from the screens. The humans had reached the panel. Park stood before it, his body covered in burns and cuts. He looked back at. "On your order." Looked up at the observation window one more time. He saw Tail Eyes. He saw the faces of every alien who had watched them suffer and done nothing. "Break it." Drove his fist through the panel. Sparks flew. Electricity arced up his arm, burning him. He did not stop. He hit it again and again until the metal crumpled and the circuits shattered. The room went dark. The fire died. The water stopped. The predators froze and then dissolved into nothing. Emergency lights flickered on, casting the chamber in dim red. 12 humans stood in the wreckage. They were bleeding, they were burned. Some could barely stand, was being held up by, had collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. Sara was cradling her hand, which had been sliced open by broken glass. But they were alive, and they were unbroken. Stood at the center of his squad, he counted heads, 12, all present, all breathing. He looked up at the observation window again. And he smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was not a victorious smile. It was the smile of something that had been pushed too far and had pushed back harder. It was the smile of a species that had spent millions of years climbing to the top of a death world's food chain. It was a warning. On the observation deck, the remaining students backed away from the window. They were warriors. They had conquered planets. They had never felt true fear before. They felt it now. One of them would later write in his official report, "We always believed humans were prey. We were wrong. They are what prey becomes when it refuses to die. They are something we do not have a word for." Director Taylor grabbed by one of his arms. "You fool! Do you understand what you have done? Do you understand what the council will say?" Did not answer. He was still staring at the humans on the screen, at Smile, at the bodies of his battered but standing, at the wreckage of his perfect test destroyed from the inside. For the first time in his long career, Instructor had tried to break a species. For the first time, the species had broken him instead. The chamber door opened with a hiss. Medical teams rushed in to tend to the wounded humans, waved them toward his first. "Check's arm needs rest, lost a lot of blood." A medic approached him. "Sir, your injuries." "I have had worse," said. The medic stared at him, at his burns, at his cuts, at the blood soaking his uniform. "Worse than this." Thought of Earth, of the places he had been, of the things he had survived. "Much worse." He walked out of Chamber 18 under his own power. Behind him his squad followed. Some walked, some limped, some were carried. But all 12 left that chamber alive. And the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. The footage spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every student on the station had seen it. They watched the humans enter Chamber 18. They watched the simulation begin. They watched Instructor increase the intensity far beyond safe levels. They watched him disable the safety systems. And they watched what happened after. The video was 4 minutes and 37 seconds long. That was how long the humans had fought after the simulation became real. 4 minutes and 37 seconds of chaos, blood, and something that made every species on the station question everything they thought they knew. In the dormitory, students huddled around screens, watching the footage in silence. When it ended, no one spoke. One young finally broke the quiet. "They were dying," she said. "They knew they were dying and they attacked." "That is not how prey behaves," another student whispered. "No," their elder agreed, "it is not." The students refused to watch the footage more than once. It disturbed them in ways they could not explain. They were warriors. They had been raised on stories of conquest and battle. But what the humans had done was different. It was not fighting for territory or resources. It was fighting with nothing to gain and everything to lose. It was fighting for the sake of fighting. It was fighting because surrender was simply not an option. One old veteran who served as a combat instructor watched the footage 3 times. When he finished, he locked himself in his quarters and did not come out for 2 days. When he finally emerged, he submitted a request to change his teaching assignment. He did not want to be responsible for training humans. He did not think he had anything to teach them. The Prill students, a species known for their caution and careful planning, began avoiding the human dormitory entirely. It was not hatred. It was not disgust. It was something more basic, something instinctive. It was fear. Medical Bay was crowded. The 12 humans occupied a full wing, their injuries requiring constant attention, had insisted on helping treat his own despite his own wounds. The medical staff had eventually given up arguing with him. Lay in a bed, her arm wrapped in a healing cast. The bone had been broken in 2 places. She would need weeks to recover fully. Despite this, she was smiling. "Did you see?" she said to who sat in the next bed. "He stabbed that thing in the eye, with his bare hands." Shin, 2 beds down, turned red. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time. "It was beautiful," said, "terrifying but beautiful." Park was already trying to get out of bed. Burns covered 30% of his body. The medical staff kept sedating him, but he kept waking up. Every time he woke up, he tried to stand. "I need to check the perimeter," he muttered, half-conscious. Lee, whose hands were wrapped in thick bandages, laughed from her bed. "There is no perimeter. We are in medical bay." "There is always a perimeter," replied. Sat in the corner, refusing to lie down. His injuries were serious but not critical. The medics had stitched his cuts and treated his burns, but he would not sleep. He kept watching the door. "You need rest," said, appearing beside him. "I will rest when I know we are safe." Looked at him for a long moment. "You think they will try again?" Shook his head. "No, is finished. But there are others who wanted us to fail. They are probably meeting right now, deciding what to do." "What can they do? We survived. We passed their test." "We did more than survive," said quietly. "We showed them something they did not want to see. That terrifies them." He was right. In Director Taylai's office, an emergency meeting was. Representatives from the Academy Council filled the room, their faces grim. Instructor stood in the corner, his rank insignia stripped from his uniform. He would face formal charges later. For now, more urgent matters demanded attention. "The footage must be destroyed," a council member said. He was old and powerful, with the bearing of someone who was used to being obeyed. "If other species see this, it will cause panic." "It is already spreading," Taylais replied. "Half the station has seen it." "Then we contain it here. No copies leave this station. Anyone who attempts to share it faces expulsion." Another council member, a elder, shook his massive head. "You cannot suppress this. The humans will tell their people what happened. The story will spread even without the footage." "Then we control the story," they said. "Made an error. The humans were injured in a training accident. They responded bravely. We praise their resilience, give them commendations, and move forward." "And what about what the footage actually shows?" they asked. "What about the way they fought? What about the look in their eyes?" Silence filled the room. Taylais had watched the footage many times now. She could not stop watching it. There was a moment, right after the safety systems were disabled, when the humans realized the danger was real. A moment of pure fear. And then something else. Their faces changed. Their posture changed. Even the way they moved changed. They went from frightened young cadets to something else entirely. Something coordinated. Something focused. Something that saw death approaching and decided to meet it head-on. She had seen many species tested in that chamber. She had seen courage and cowardice, strength and weakness. She had never seen anything like what the humans did. They became more dangerous when they were scared. Their fear did not paralyze them. It energized them. It unified them. It turned a group of individuals into a single lethal organism. That was not supposed to be possible. "We need to study them," the elder said. "Their biology, their psychology, their history. There is something in their evolution that we do not understand." "They are from a death world," Taylais said. "Perhaps that is explanation enough. Many species come from death worlds. None of them are like this." The meeting continued for hours. In the end, they agreed on a course of action. The official record would show a training accident caused by equipment failure, would be removed from his position and reassigned far from the academy. The humans would receive commendations for bravery and upgraded quarters, and the footage would be deleted from all systems. What they did not know was that Base Sora had already made a copy. She was an engineer. She understood systems. When the medical staff was distracted, she had accessed the Academy's backup database from a terminal in Medical Bay. It took her less than 20 minutes to locate the footage and create a hidden copy that could not be traced. She showed it to Later that night. "Why?" he asked, watching his own face on the screen. Watching the moment his fear became rage. "Because they will try to bury this," Sora said. "They will pretend it never happened. They will tell themselves that we are not a threat, that we are still the primitive newcomers who should be grateful for any attention." She paused. "But we have the proof, and someday we might need it." Nodded slowly. He thought about what the galaxy believed about humans: fragile, short-lived, primitive prey. They had no idea. "Keep it safe," he said. "Hide it somewhere they will never find it." Sora smiled. "I already have." 3 days later, the 12 humans were moved to officer quarters on the station's upper levels. No one questioned the decision. No one complained. The students who had once looked at them with disgust now looked away when they passed. The warriors gave them respectful nods. Even the instructors treated them differently. Something had changed. In his new quarters, stood at the window looking out at the stars. Earth was out there somewhere, impossibly far away. A small blue world full of danger and beauty and life. A death world. His death world. He thought about what Instructor had tried to do. He thought about what the Council was trying to hide. He thought about all the species on this station who had spent centuries believing they were at the top of the galactic food chain. They were about to learn otherwise. The Academy had tried to instill fear in the humans. They had succeeded. But they had also learned something in return. Humans did not break under fear, they sharpened. And a sharpened human was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. 3 years passed. The 12 humans graduated from the Academy at the top of their class. This surprised no one. After the incident in Chamber 18, no instructor dared to fail them. No student dared to challenge them. The Academy had tried to break them and had discovered that humans did not break. Returned to Earth and rose quickly through the military ranks. Lee became the head of emergency response for the entire Asian sector. Park trained the next generation of human soldiers. Wrote books about survival that were translated into 40 languages. They stayed in contact. They never forgot what they had been through together, and they never forgot what the galaxy had tried to do to them. Director Taylise retired from the Academy 2 years after the incident. She told everyone it was for health reasons. The truth was different. She could not sleep anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the footage. She saw a smile. She saw 12 humans turning fear into fury. She had spent her whole life believing that the older species were superior, that humans were children who needed guidance, that the galaxy had nothing to fear from the newcomers. She had been wrong. Instructor vanished. Some said he had been exiled to a distant colony. Some said he had taken his own life. Some said he was still out there somewhere, hiding from the shame of what he had done. The truth was simpler. He had gone home to the worlds and told his people what he had seen. He had warned them about humans, about what they could become when pushed too far. No one believed him. They would learn. The war began in the 4th year after the incident. It started with a border dispute. It grew into something worse. The Dominion had been building their fleet for decades, waiting for the right moment. When they struck hard. They fell in 3 days. Their fleet was scattered. Their leaders were captured or killed. Millions of refugees fled across the galaxy, looking for anyone who would help them. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. They debated for weeks while they advanced. They formed alliances and made promises. but everyone knew the truth. They were losing. The representative stood before the council, her blue skin pale with exhaustion and grief. "We need soldiers," she said. "Real soldiers, warriors who can stand against the—" "We have sent what we can," a Prill diplomat replied. "But they are too strong. Their numbers are too great." "There is another option," someone said. Everyone turned. A young officer stood at the back of the chamber. He had been at the academy. He had seen the footage. "We could ask the humans." Silence filled the room. Then slowly, the older council members began to shake their heads. "Impossible. Humans are too new, too few. They cannot make a difference. They are barely civilized. They fight among themselves constantly. And even if they agreed, we would owe them. We would be admitting that we need them." The young officer stepped forward. 3 years ago, the Academy tried to destroy 12 human cadets. They survived. They fought back. They won. I was there. I saw it. He pulled out a device and activated it. The footage began to play on the central screen. The council watched in silence. Some looked away. Some could not look away. When it ended, no one spoke for a long time. Finally, the eldest council member, who had served for over 200 years, nodded slowly. "Send the message. Ask the humans for help." The message reached Earth at midnight, local time, in a secure government facility. It was decoded and brought immediately to the highest levels of human leadership. The message was simple: "We need soldiers. We will pay any price. Please help us." Within hours, a meeting was convened. Military leaders, politicians, and advisors gathered to discuss the response. Many spoke in favor of demanding guarantees before any help was sent. Others suggested using this opportunity to secure permanent advantages for humanity. Then spoke. He was a general now, one of the youngest in human history. His face still carried faint scars from Chamber 18. His eyes still held that same calm intensity that had carried him through the fire. "We know what the galaxy thinks of us," he said. "We know how they treated us. We know what they tried to do to our people at the Academy. They looked down on us. They called us primitives. They tried to break us." He paused, looking around the room. "But we are not them. We do not abandon people who need help, even if those people once abandoned us. We do not let children die because their parents were cruel. We do not let worlds burn because of old grudges." He stood. "We are human. This is what we do. We help, we fight, we survive, and we bring others along with us." The vote was unanimous. Humanity's response went out across the stars. It reached the council chambers where the desperate representatives waited. It reached the refugee ships fleeing the advance. It reached the occupied worlds where the conquered waited for any sign of hope. The message was short. "We remember the Academy. We remember the chamber. We remember being treated like animals." A pause. "We are coming anyway, because that is what humans do." The first human ships arrived at the front lines 2 weeks later. They were not many. Humanity's fleet was small compared to the galactic powers, but word of their coming had already spread. The commanders studied their intelligence reports with growing unease. They had heard stories about humans, strange stories, stories about a death world species that did not know how to surrender, stories about soldiers who sang while they burned, stories about warriors who smiled at death. They had dismissed these stories as propaganda. Then they met the humans in battle. General led the first assault personally. His ship was the first into the fire, just as he had been the first to face the predators in Chamber 18. Behind him came the sons and daughters of Earth, warriors trained on a world that tried to kill them every day. They did not fight like other species. They did not follow the careful, measured tactics that they expected. They took risks that seemed insane. They pressed attacks that should have failed. They refused to retreat when any sensible force would have fled. And they won. The first battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the fleet was broken. Their flagship was captured. Their admiral was in human custody. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Humans had turned the tide. Humans had done the impossible. On the refugee ships, children heard the news and cheered. On the occupied worlds, the conquered began to hope. On the leaders met in secret and began to discuss terms of surrender. And in a small apartment on Earth, an old warrior named watched the news feeds with something that might have been a smile. He had tried to warn them. He had told them what humans were capable of. No one had listened. Now they knew. In the years that followed, humanity took its place among the galactic powers, not as newcomers, not as primitives, not as children to be guided and controlled. They came as equals, as partners, as protectors. Some species resented them, some feared them, but none could deny what they had done. The Academy footage was eventually released. Someone leaked it. No one ever found out who. It spread across the galaxy, viewed by trillions of beings on thousands of worlds. They watched the humans enter Chamber 18. They watched the test begin. They watched Instructor disable the safety systems. And they watched what happened next. They watched fear become fury. They watched prey become predator. They watched 12 young humans, battered and bleeding and burning, destroy everything that had been designed to break them. At the end of the footage, there was, looking up at the observation window, smiling that smile. A warning. A promise. A declaration. Humanity was here, and they were not afraid. They never had been. The galaxy had tried to instill fear in the humans. The Academy had hidden the footage, but the truth could not be buried forever. Humans were not prey. Humans were not primitives. Humans were something else entirely. They were survivors, and nothing in the universe could break them.